July 16, 1945. In a brief moment in the desert of New Mexico, humanity created a second sun on Earth. The explosion was so powerful that windows shattered more than 150 kilometers away. But what truly terrified the scientists was not the power of the blast. It was what it meant, because in that moment, humanity had opened the door to the nuclear age of destruction, and no one knew if that door could ever be closed again. For the first few seconds after the bomb detonated, no one spoke. Observers stood frozen in disbelief. Some scientists could hardly believe that the experiment had actually worked. A massive fireball rose into the sky, followed by an enormous column of smoke and dust forming the now famous mushroom cloud. The light from the explosion was so intense that observers many kilometers away could still see it clearly, even through dark protective goggles. Some felt a sudden wave of heat against their skin, despite being miles from the blast. Then, a few seconds later, the shockwave arrived. A thunderous roar swept across the desert. The sound echoed off distant mountains like a series of endless rolling thunderclaps. One scientist finally broke the silence. It worked, but not everyone was celebrating. As he watched the massive fireball rising into the sky, J. Robert Oppenheimer was reminded of a line from the ancient Indian scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Years later, he recalled the words that flashed through his mind in that moment. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." It was more than a scientific triumph. It was also a warning. Humanity had just proven that it possessed the power to destroy itself. Soon after the successful test, a secret message was sent to Washington. President Harry S. Truman, who was attending the Potsdam Conference in Germany at the time, quickly received the news. The coded message was simple. The baby was born successfully, but Truman understood exactly what it meant. The United States now possessed the most powerful weapon ever created in human history. By that time, World War II in Europe had already ended. Nazi Germany had surrendered. But in the Pacific, Japan was still fighting. The battles between American and Japanese forces had been extremely brutal. During the Battle of Okinawa alone, more than 200,000 people died. American military leaders feared that if they had to invade Japan's main islands, casualties could reach millions. So the US government faced a difficult decision. Should they use the atomic bomb to force Japan to surrender, or continue the war through conventional means? In the end, President Truman made his decision. The atomic bomb would be used. On the morning of August 6, 1945, a B-29 bomber named Enola Gay took off from the island of Tinian in the Pacific. Inside its bomb bay was a uranium bomb known as Little Boy. At 8:15 a.m., the bomb was dropped over the Japanese city of Hiroshima. Seconds later, a blinding white flash filled the sky. The explosion was equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT temperatures. At the center of the blast reached millions of degrees. In an instant, tens of thousands of people were vaporized, buildings were obliterated, fires engulfed the entire city. An estimated 70,000 to 80,000 people died on the first day alone. In the months that followed, tens of thousands more died from burns, injuries, and radiation sickness. 3 days later, on August 9, 1945, another B-29 bomber carried a plutonium bomb called Fat Man. The original target was the city of Kakura, but heavy clouds blocked visibility, so the pilots turned to their secondary target, Nagasaki. At 11:02 a.m., the bomb detonated above the city. Its destructive power was even greater than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Around 40,000 people were killed instantly. The final death toll eventually rose to 70,000 or more. The world had been forever changed. On August 15, 1945, Japan announced its surrender. World War II had finally come to an end. To some people, the atomic bombs had shortened the war and saved millions of lives that might have been lost in a prolonged invasion. But to others, they marked the beginning of a terrifying new era, because humanity now knew something frightening. A single weapon could destroy an entire city in seconds. After the war, other nations began developing their own nuclear weapons. The Soviet Union successfully tested its first atomic bomb in 1949. Soon after came Britain, France, and China. The world entered a dangerous nuclear arms race during the Cold War. Thousands of nuclear warheads were built. Some were hundreds of times more powerful than the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima. And with so many weapons in existence, a single mistake could trigger global catastrophe. Today, the Trinity Test site still exists in the desert of New Mexico. The ground there is still covered with a strange green glass, created when desert sand was melted by the explosion. This glass is known as Trinitite. It remains as a physical reminder of the moment when humanity first unleashed the immense power hidden inside the atom. The Trinity Test was not just a scientific achievement, it was a turning point in human history, a moment when human intelligence created power that once seemed almost godlike. But it also served as a warning, because such power carries enormous responsibility. At 5:29 a.m., on July 16, 1945, an explosion in the desert changed the world forever. In that moment, humanity didn't just enter the atomic age, it entered a time when the future of civilization itself might depend on a single button.